everybody. Happy Sunday. How we doing? I don't believe you. Are you actually doing good? Okay. There it is. Well, exciting times here in Pullman. The town is filling up. Some of the locals are like, yeah, great. No, it's exciting. I got volunteered to help move college kids yesterday because clearly they saw my muscles and were like, this is the guy we need. But that was really fun. I think my favorite part, though, I was telling people this morning, my favorite part was watching the freshmen get dropped off by mom and dad and just the pure anxiety that the mom and dads were, and just helping them to understand, like, it's okay, we're not in a rush, So it was fun. I love this time of year. Football season is coming into play. How about that? Yeah. Broncos won yesterday. You're going to get a lot of updates. If you're new here, we're a Broncos church. No? We're not? Oh, man. I may be at the wrong place.
You're not supposed to lie.
I know. That's a good point. You're not supposed to lie. We got Cougar football coming up. We got Battle of the Palouse in a week or so, 2 weeks? Man, that'll be good. A lot of pressure on WSU for that one. You don't want to drop that one. How many of you, we have college kids? How many of you are college kids with us? Jordan, hi. Welcome back. Cool, we got a few back here. Awesome. They're going to be rolling in for the next few weeks. So next week, we're going to have Gary. He's going to talk a little bit about some of the college stuff going on. But if you get to know Gary, Eric with Impact Ministries, all these guys, there's a lot of good places to get connected for college kids. So welcome to Real Life Church. Excited to have you here. And I didn't introduce myself. My name is Kelly. I'm one of the pastors here at Real Life Church. And please reach out if you need anything. We're here to serve. And I'm really excited about this new series that we're starting today. Some of you guys remember here at first of the year, we started this thing called Spiritual Rhythms. The first of the year, we did a series on generosity. These spiritual disciplines or spiritual practices, what we call rhythms, that really help us to walk in the way of Jesus and practically implement the teachings of him in our lives. And so first of the year, we did generosity. And what we do is we take a practice, we do it, we implement it, we practically do it as a community. These are really important. They're not just things that you come and learn and then you just kind of think about what's next week. These are things that you learn and then practice with the hope that you start to build habits and patterns and really just start laying seeds for what I hope is for the rest of your life, things that will train you to look and live like Jesus. And in college, I had a good friend named Austin Hill. He was one of the fastest guys to ever go through Southern Utah University in the 400-meter dash. I had the privilege of training with him. He was a couple years older than me. He was also about a foot shorter than I was. But his stride was about as long as mine, which drove me nuts. He was a freak of a human being. And the best part about being in a track and field or any kind of sport with somebody like that is you get to train with them. And as a young freshman coming into college, he was, I think, a junior at that time. They just basically stuck me as his buddy, which I don't think he loved, right? Here was this awkward Utah kid. This guy was from Vegas, had a whole different background than I did. And so here I was asking questions and training with him every single day. And I remember just in practice, I would, lock my eyes on the back of his head, which is really more something like this. And I would just try to stay as close to the back of his head as I possibly could, because I knew I was never going to beat him. He was just so much stronger and faster than I was. But I knew if I could just try to stay with him for as long as I could, I would improve. That's exactly what happened. Those first couple years I got to train with Austin, the more I followed him, the more I asked questions. They would stick me in the same room with him on trips. The guy was probably so sick of me. But I improved so much in those first 2 years because I had a guy like Austin to train with. And when I think about what it means to be a disciple of Jesus, when I think about what it looks like to follow him, I often think of the stories of Austin. Because when we're following Jesus, it's really it's the idea of how do we not just try to be like Jesus. How many know being a disciple is not just trying to be like Jesus, right? It's really training yourself to be like Jesus. It's conforming and molding your life into a place where you begin to reflect what you follow. And that's exactly what we do with these series is we try to help people create margin in their life to follow Jesus in a practical way. And so we're going to do that for the next 4 weeks. And we're going to take one particular spiritual practice or discipline, and we're going to just do it together. And the one we're going to look at this week, which I hope you guys are excited about, is personally one of my favorites, and the one I probably do the best, is Sabbath. Yes, right? Sabbath. So we're going to practice Sabbath this week. And out of all the practices that we could do, this is a good one. This is a really good one. And I think it is needed the most in our lives. And if you think about what it means, again, to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, Sabbath plays a pivotal part of what this can look like. In fact, I think a lot of us, we kind of hear this phrase disciple, and it doesn't have a lot of meaning to us, especially if you kind of grew up in the church. You know, disciple has a lot of different kind of connotations to it. But I think what happens, and I think in just church in general, this is just Kelly's little soapbox commentary, so prepare yourself for a second, is we become very culturally Christian, don't we? We kind of know to go on church on Sunday, maybe read our Bible a couple times a week. We would do a prayer here and there. But there's a bit of a cultural Christianity that kind of seeps in where we don't really do the disciple process. We don't necessarily know even what it possibly can practically mean to follow Jesus outside of maybe just an intellectual level, I believe kind of level. Whereas how do we really change our lives? And I like what Dallas Willard said about this. He says, the greatest issue facing the world today, think about that, the greatest issue facing our world today, with all its heartbreaking needs, is whether those who are identified as Christians, how many of you identify as a Christian? There's probably a few of you in here, right? Will become disciples, students, apprentices, practitioners of Jesus Christ, steadily learning from him how to live the life of the kingdom of the heavens into every corner of human existence. And I think he's right. I think Dallas is right. I think we have people who maybe have said a prayer once upon a time or have a kind of cultural identity of a Christian. I think it can even become almost like an ethnic identity. Our parents were this, my grandparents were this, so I'm this. Whereas when you really start to read the New Testament, you start to understand who Jesus is, he calls you in such a deeper level into actual following, apprenticing, student of Jesus. I think this is really important. Because what we need in our world are less cultural Christians and more actual followers of Jesus. How many of you agree that we need actual followers of Jesus? And then to be a disciple, let me untangle this, because a lot of times we use the word disciple as a verb, like I got to disciple somebody or I'm discipling. But we really don't see it that way in the New Testament. Disciple is a noun. It's not a verb. It is an identity that you receive, that you take on, not just something that you do. It's always a noun in the New Testament. You are a follower of Jesus. You are an apprentice. You are a learner, or you're not. Right? You are a follower, an apprentice, or a learner, or you're not. It's an identity that we claim, that we receive. And how many of you know that from a place of identity, we are very powerful people? When you can understand that your identity is rooted in Christ, it is not rooted in other things. And that is really important to the walk. We live out this identity by conforming our lives around Jesus' teachings, as he is our teacher, our rabbi. So we're using a first century model, how Jesus would have used his model for his original disciples, to think about how we practice things like Sabbath, generosity, fasting, solitude, scripture, all these things that we're going to do over the coming years. And that's the goal of any disciple. Again, in Jesus' time, if you were to a rabbi and disciple, there were really three main goals. And we went over this last fall when we kind of introduced this idea. But the three main goals of a disciple to their rabbi was to be with their rabbi, to be like their rabbi, and to do as their rabbi did. These were the goals of any disciple. This is why they just immersed their entire lives into following Jesus. They dropped their nets and they followed him, didn't they? This was in the time of the first century, it was a great honor to be a disciple of any rabbi, which kind of brings it more interesting that Jesus kind of chose these misfit ragamuffin fishermen from Galilee. These guys who didn't have the right educations in their time, and he said, come and follow me. So when we look at following Jesus, when we actually understand what that means, it comes into the three same components that we're saying, I'm going to be with Jesus, I'm going to be like Jesus, and I'm going to do as Jesus did. Those are the three components of what it looks like to be a follower, an apprentice, a student, a disciple of Jesus. Again, the main way that we do this is what's called spiritual formation, spiritual disciplines, depending on whatever backgrounds you have. What we call here RLC is the spiritual rhythms. The spiritual rhythms. These are here to create new beats that our lives can walk to. Again, I think the best way to think about this is how do you create margin to follow Jesus? Because there's a lot that goes on in our lives that we may not prioritize. Maybe we deprioritize things that can actually get us on the right beat of following Jesus. It's trying to create new patterns and habits and training our brains and our minds and our bodies to desire these things over the things that we might be desiring elsewhere. So twice a year, we're going to do this. We did, though, again, one in first of the year, and we're going to do here in the fall every year. Again, try to look at what it looks like to practice these rhythms in our lives and as a community. The goal really is that we live out those three components of be with Jesus, be like Jesus, and do as Jesus did. As we looked at the first of the year, I hope that you see these don't look at these as like religious mandates. All right, don't be like, well, my church says I have to sleep. It's not the checklist item. Again, don't get into this checklist mode of being like, look what I did. Yes, right? These are things that are designed to be a blessing in our lives. Just like generosity. Like we can be extremely generous people but have the wrong motivations, can't we? We can be generous people but then only do it because we like that check the box type of religiosity, rather than really seeing how this changes us, how it conforms us to Jesus' image, how it blesses other people. And I think Sabbath is the same way, that it's something that we receive as a gift for our benefit, that's a blessing to us, that in return can bless other people. So we're going to look at Sabbath this month. Are you guys excited for Sabbath? Amen. I'm excited. How many of you are not excited about Sabbath? How many have no idea what Sabbath even is? There might be a couple. So let's start with this as we dive into Sabbath here. How many of you know that we are a tired people? Boy, that one got a yes, right? Everyone's like, oh, amen. Especially first service. Are you kidding me, right? We are a tired people. On average, Americans in particular are exhausted. There was a recent article by Forbes that was done just in April of this year, and I found it really fascinating, but I'll take this little snippet of it. It said, American workers are worn down, stuck in a cycle of exhaustion that saps their energy and drive. Burnout is a pervasive state of physical and emotional depletion. Man, what a line. Burnout. Pervasive state of physical and emotional depletion. How many of you know you can be physically emotionally tired? And how many of you know you can be spiritually exhausted? I think there's a component that Forbes is missing there. There's a spiritual exhaustion too. This is brought in part about long periods of constant, unabated, unrelenting stress. You guys aren't stressed, are you? Not in this day and age, right? What research is showing us is that American workers are running on fumes. And I think if you really sat back and you thought about it, you're like, yeah, there are weeks and days where you're like, I don't even know if I can get out of bed. 4 in 5 workers in America right now are in fear of losing their jobs. This is leading to extra overtime working to try to prove their validity to the companies, the justification. They feel like they have to work extra more, and there's a culture of that. And I think in not only the West, but in things like Japan, where you're kind of expected. There's like work 40, but really, if you're serious, you'll work 60 hours a week. I mean, how many of us have been in jobs where 5:30 rolls around? And I was notorious for this because I was like, I'm out of here. But there were, you kind of have this unspoken code of like, you don't leave till the work's done. And 5:30 turns into 6:30, 7 o'clock. And you're just exhausted. Economic turbulence, advancing technologies, and others are forcing people to try to work harder and more often to justify their positions. Again, we kind of have this idea, this narrative in our minds that if I can only produce more, then it'll be harder to eliminate my position. If I can just keep on producing at high levels, just produce. But at what cost? And I think it's time as a society, as a community, that we start to really wrestle, what is the cost of this? What is this costing us as humans? Because we have been trained, we have been formed around a culture of high production, I think we boast about this, don't we? Like, I don't know of many disciplines where the boasting is how you don't rest. Like that culture of hustle, right? Well, I don't take a break. I'm tough, right? There's this kind of hustling culture where we're kind of going against this whole day of like, we don't rest. That's ridiculous. But then if you ask any athlete, we have coaches in here that will testify to this. If you ask any athlete and you just say, I'm just going to run you as hard as I can for 7 days, for 31 days a month, is that athlete going to produce? No. That athlete is going to burn out and quit. That athlete is going to break things and be injured. Yet, and we get into the worldly space, we realize maybe I can just run as fast as I can, as long as I can, and not rest. And here's the thing about Sabbath. You either intentionally do it or it will be imposed upon you. There is a moment where you will have to rest. And I like to prefer that it is something that we intentionally do weekly rather than imposed upon us at the end of our ropes. Again, this culture of production is prevalent in our world. How many of you, again, I'm super guilty of this. I'm not a great like one-on-one conversationalist. I'm a little bit of an introvert, which is ridiculous that the Lord put me here to do this. But the first thing most of us ask, right, is what do you do? What kind of work do you do? And I think a lot of us, some of us have great pride in that, which is fine. You kind of have this like, yes, like I get to do this. But what we're really asking somebody is, what do you produce? What do you produce? And even as a pastor, I'm like, what do I produce? I did a sermon last week, like the church is a weird place, right? Like I don't have a product to give you, like wrapped up and sealed and say, here you go, right? What do you produce is really what we care about. And we take pride in what we produce. Again, there's a good part of that. It's okay to be happy and excited about what you do. But again, there's the culture of that we care a lot about that. Even when we're relaxing, and this is probably a lot of people in this room, is even when we're trying to relax, many of us have this guilty conscience about, well, I should be doing something. How many of you are just laying on the couch and you're just like, what a bum? And you're like, I should be mowing the grass. I should be pruning the bushes. This is all in my internal dialogues, by the way. Right? I think so often it's even hard for us to just relax because we're thinking all these other things I should be producing or should be doing. I think it's just something we're trained with. We're molded this way. It's a cultural byproduct of our world that we live in. And we have a hard time truly resting. So I ask you, how many of you are tired? How many of you are weary? How many of you are exhausted physically, emotionally, spiritually? It's okay. It's okay to admit this. It's actually very good to say, I am physically, emotionally tired, spiritually exhausted. I see this in young Christians a lot. There's kind of two types that I like to think about. You have ones that are shot out of the gun at like 100 miles per hour, and they're going to save the world next year. Right? Those Christians, they can run very hard with a lot of passion for like 3 to 4 years, and all of a sudden they just drop. Boom. And you would think, do you even love Jesus anymore? The way that you used to talk about him compared to where you are now. And then you have Christians that come out of the gun, and they're just like at that tortoise space. They're like, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. Right? And there's a happy balance there that I think we need to find in our lives, that we get excited and passionate, but we do it in a way with longevity, that we recognize our life is a lifetime of following Jesus because we're so tired. We get tired. And you feel the temptation always to do more at work or at home. You feel the pressures to perform, to constantly produce. I have a mixed range of emotions about this church growing and getting bigger in size. I love it. It's exciting. And it's like proof that God is doing cool things, right? But at the same time, I know that what comes with that is a great pressure on my pastoral teams, the leadership teams, myself, to be like, keep producing. And that scares me because I don't want to fall into that. Even in the church, we feel those pressures. We even imagine a God who is constantly pushing us to do more, to win more people, to do more events, to reach more people. And again, this draws us into a place of production and pressure. And this is what I have seen many of my pastoral friends collapse under. And it's very scary. I don't think the Lord is behind this type of life, a life of exhaustion and burnout, because my Jesus says something very differently. He says in Matthew 11, 28 through 30, he says, come to me, follow me, be my disciple. All of you who are weary and heavy burdened, I will give you what? Rest. Sabbath. Take my yoke upon you. This is the idea of what it looks like to follow. If you were following a rabbi, you would take their yoke upon you. It's their teachings. It's their life. It's their tasks. It's what they did. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am what? Gentle and humble in heart. And you will find rest for your souls. For again, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Does that sound like that cultural narrative of production and busyness to you? Jesus is very countercultural to the way of our world. He is a God of rest, of easy burdens, and good, healthy yokes, not overcrowded busyness and production. He doesn't want you to carry the yoke of production, stress, and approval of others. In fact, he teaches us the exact opposite of this. He wants to teach you a life that you can run, get tired, and know where to go to rest. Run, get tired, and then rest. This is how we run and not grow what is called weary. This weariness is a constant just burnout of the human soul, physically and emotionally. And again, we talk about this a lot. Our emotional health and our spiritual health are closely interlinked. And so there's a really important thing that we're aware of that as we run. Like, yes, you're going to run, you're going to get tired, but there's rest. That's the beauty of it. To create margin every week where he meets us for a significant amount of time. And again, this is one of the most important aspects, I think, of what it means to rest. And he reminds us who we are in him. Reminds us who we are in him, that we're not just these mechanical assembly line byproducts of production, but that we are people who have given our lives to follow him. That we are people who understand the grace and compassion and the rest and the dependency that we have in him. And that's who we are. We are his students, his disciples. And even though that, we are his children that he wants to see be able to rest. You know, I have a tree in my front yard. It's an apple tree. And so we've been here, we're in our third year right now. So we've gone through a couple of cycles of harvest and things. And this apple tree is what's called a bumper crop. I didn't know what that was till I moved here. Thanks, you farmers, for letting me know. Bumper crop. So every other year it produces, and when it produces, I mean, the amount of apples on this thing is unreal. Like, I couldn't believe it. It was to the point where it was like exhausting trying to get rid of them there was hundreds of thousands of apples on this tree. I mean, the bees were having just a heyday, right? And it only happens every other year. And so as we started to as you do, you start exploring why does this happen, things like that. And what happens is the tree takes an entire year of rest. A lot of you probably know this. You're like, dude, come on, we got things to do. But the tree takes a year off where it doesn't produce. Like right now, it's not producing at all. And so that next year, it'll just overwhelm me again with apples. And we'll be in this vicious cycle all over again of just abundance of fruit, right? Not a bad problem to have, right? But I learned a lot from that tree when it comes to this idea of rest, because how many of us really produce good fruit when we're tired? The tree knows this. When it's exhausted, it's not going to just, all right, I got to squeeze out a few more apples, right? No, he's really trying to, I'm like personifying the tree. Harry the tree or something, right? But it knows I need to rest in order to produce good fruit. And if you look at the fruits of the Spirit, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, how many of you are those things when you're tired? Not a single one of us. Nobody's patient when they're tired. Nobody's kind when they're tired. We drop into this animalistic nature when we're tired, like everything I need is mine, right? We're not that way. We're not kind. We're not good. We struggle with self-control when we're tired. What happens is we're like a bumper crop trying to produce every single year. You just can't do it. You can't do it. We need, in order to provide and to produce fruit, like fruits of the Spirit, you need to be rested. You can't do it when you're tired. We need a weekly Sabbath. And the good thing about the Sabbath, again, depending on your backgrounds, your traditions, how you were raised, I think many of us think of Sabbath as just this large list of things that you do not do. How many are you with me there? These are more about the things you don't do than anything else. And there might be some of us too, and because that's kind of a half-truth. There's also some of us that look at Sabbath and you're like, oh, great, a relaxed day. I'm just going to binge like all the great episodes of my favorite show today, right? That's also kind of a half-truth, right? It's not about just not doing things or not doing anything to the point where you're just like molding your brain around whatever is on a screen all day. Let's think about what a Sabbath really is. Jesus says it this way. In Mark 2:27, he says, Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. That Sabbath was made for humanity. That we need to look at Sabbath as a gift for us to receive, right? I don't want you to think about Sabbath again as some religious mandate that you were taught that if you don't do these things, God will be mad at you, right? That's not the heart behind this at all. It's not a religious mandate to be observed. It's a gift to be received. Think about creating margin for rest in your life as a gift that God, the creator of the universe, is like, I want to give you this. Please receive it. Rather than trying to go, you know what, I'm just going to keep working even harder now. Receive the gift of a Sabbath. It's a gift that's rooted in the very beginning of the Bible and was demonstrated by our Creator himself. Look at Genesis 2, the second page of the Bible. It says, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. Created everything that's ever been created, seen and unseen. He's like, I did it. I created it. What did you do this week? Just kidding. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing, so on the seventh day, he rested. God Sabbathed. Yeah, but I got a lot to do this week. God Sabbathed. Yeah, but you don't understand. I have all these things. God Sabbathed. He rested from all his work. If we are to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, we need to understand that this is a gift that we can be given and received. It's a day of blessing. Think of it this way. Man, this is a day I get to do this. This is a day where I get to experience a blessing that I create and be intentional with this margin in my life. A day that's marked out to remember the goodness of our God in this world. And this is what helped me over the years that I've been practicing this is this is a day where I get to just reflect on the goodness of God. How many of you just have a day where you're like, this is the day I get to focus on the goodness of God? Yes, we do that throughout the week. I hope it's not just a day. But here's a day where it's wildly intentional in your life. It was made for humanity to be enjoyed alongside God in his rest. To be enjoyed. To be cherished and looked forward to. Wayne Mueller wrote this about the Sabbath. He says, the Sabbath is not a burdensome requirement from some law-giving deity. You ought, you better, you must. But rather a remembrance of a law that is firmly embedded into the fabric of nature. Like that apple tree that overgrows every other year. It's embedded into the fabric of his creation. It is a reminder of how things really are, the rhythmic dance to which we unavoidably belong. That we need this in our hearts, we need this in our minds, we need this physically, we need this refreshing. You and I both need a Sabbath. Our souls need a Sabbath. We need a day where we are reminded over and over again of every week with intentionality who God is and who is our Lord Jesus Christ. And it has taken me years to learn how to Sabbath. I'm a product of about 10 years of this, and I came into it fighting. Like, how dare you tell me I have to take a rest, right? But I have learned over these years that there is no way I'm still in ministry without this. There is no way. There's no way I'm doing this job. I'm not standing here in front of you if I'm not in a rest once a week. The pressures, the demands, the burdens are just too heavy. And I think that goes for every single one of us in here. That we have got to do this and take it seriously to create margin for this gift to be received. I've come to the place now where I look so forward to my Sabbath every week. Just ask my wife. I come home, my Sabbath's on a Friday. I come home Thursday, I'm like skipping. You know, like tomorrow's the day. You know, tomorrow's the day. I get to Sabbath. I get to rest. It's not just a time of relaxing, it's a time of renewal. And that's how we should be thinking about it, a renewal of our souls, bodies, and minds. My soul needs this, your soul needs it, your body needs it. And I think a Sabbath has 4 key components. 4 key components. You have to first stop, and a big part of that word cease or Sabbath. Rest, delight, and worship. Stop, rest, delight, and worship. These are the things that we're going to study the next 4 weeks. Stop, rest, delight, and worship. And when I think about stop, that first one, my mind goes to the word Selah. And we just finished the Psalms. This is a very psalm word, Selah. It's that Hebrew word. You might see it written in many of the Psalms where it has like a break, and then it says Selah, and then more passages. And it just means cease and reflect. Cease and reflect. So when you're reading a psalm and you're really supposed to be like kind of singing it, or it's poetry, it wants you to stop and reflect on everything you just sang about. It's kind of this, I used to call it a dramatic pause in music. It's that dramatic pause, that stop within the song to be able to reflect on what's going on behind you. And that's exactly how I think about my Sabbath days, is it is a Selah, a stop and a reflection. Okay, God, what did you do this week in my life? What am I hungry for? What am I tired of? What am I angry over? What am I sad over? What are these things that are just like thorns in my side that annoy me, right? Or why am I so tired? What's going on? Why was last week so incredibly difficult, or whatever it might be? It's that pause, that Selah in our weeks. And for Jesus, our rabbi, he would have taken these on Friday night to Saturday night. That's the traditional Jewish Sabbath. As traditional in history of Christianity became a Sunday, the day of the resurrection, as a day of Sabbath. And it really doesn't matter which day you take. And I think when you think about stopping, especially if you've never done this before, less is more. I didn't start by taking 24 hours. For me, it was like if I had 3 or 4 hours on a Friday night, that was a Sabbath for me. You know, I started bivocational. I was working 2 or 3 different jobs, and it was hard to find a particular time to just rest. And I found building it in small increments was the best way for me. To find times where I could normalize it, put it into a routine, and create margin for that pattern in my life. So it's something that you have to kind of look at your schedule. You understand what you have to do and the things you accomplish, but really be intentional with where it looks in your life. If you have kind of a strange schedule, maybe it's not a normal Monday through Friday, maybe take a midweek Sabbath. You know, something that just kind of fits better your world, and start small. Maybe don't try to take that big bite of 24 hours. Maybe just take a few hours in an evening, or maybe a whole morning where you just say, this is the time I get to rest, reflect, and take a Selah. Because stopping it's truly about interrupting the routine. That's kind of the whole point. How many of you just love your routines? You've been doing the same thing for years. It's time to stop it. Especially college kids, as you go into school and semesters, like, learn to do this now, because guess what? When you graduate, it doesn't slow down. It gets busy, and even busier, even after school, which I'm really sad for you that I had to say that. It does. It gets crazier. So learn how to do this now while you're in school, as you're learning how you're applying everything else. Take the time to stop, interrupt the routine. Again, this is the word Selah, means to cease or stop. And this helps me a lot by thinking about it this way, that Sabbath isn't just something you got to do, but it's a Selah. It's a time of pause and reflection in your life. And again, it's not just relaxing. It's a time of renewal. Do things that will renew you. Renew you physically, your spiritually, your emotional renewal. Don't just go binge watch something, even though sometimes that's cool. But really do something that's going to fill you up. I think that's really important. You have to decide that. I can't get up here and go, here's the 5 things you're allowed to do on a Sabbath day, okay? It's being intentional when we stop in order and reflect what God has done in our life. It's an opportunity to see our week, not through what we accomplished, but in seeing how the Lord met us and whatever the week brought us. How many of you can journal? You guys any journals in here? I'm not a big journaler, but that's a good thing to do through this, how you reflect. We have artists in here. I'm sure using art to renew kind of what God has been doing in your life is also a great thing to do. Here's another thing Wayne Mueller said. He said, if we only stop when we are finished with all of our work, we will never stop. We will never stop, because our work is never completely done. How many of you are like, yep, that sounds about right? Sabbath liberates us from the need to be finished. Hear that. Sabbath liberates us from the need to be finished. It's stopping by putting the emails down. It's stopping by putting all the stresses away. It's stopping by depending on the sovereignty of God, saying, there's nothing I can do about this. I depend on you. It's stopping because you're realizing maybe you're not as important as you think at work. I try really hard not to respond to text messages unless, it's close friends or whatever. Just because it's like, no one, I'm not that important. People are going to be okay if they wait a day, right? It's good things to learn to stop with. So this week, you guys ready for your homework? I shouldn't have said it that way. But this week, I want you to interrupt your routine. The practice this week, the rhythm this week is to interrupt your routine by doing a Selah. Pick a time to stop. It could be, again, 3 to 4 hours. If you've never done this before, again, start small. I don't want you to do this for 4 weeks and become discouraged because you bit off too much. For others who are maybe have more time, take the 24 hours. Pick a day. And say, this is a day where I'm going to devote myself to renewal. And not just relaxing, but renewal. And doing things that you really enjoy doing. Things that will fill your cup up. Some examples are maybe after Sundays. Sundays are a great day to start Sabbath. You come in, you go to church on Sunday morning, you get a few hours after church that you just take and you reflect and you renew. You spend more time worshiping. You don't just take the hour and you're like, okay, I did my thing. Maybe you take the day. Maybe you take a day without a cell phone. Imagine that. A day where there's no interruption, where you break that routine. Maybe Friday night after work, if you kind of have that Monday through Friday kind of routine, maybe you just go at home after work and instead of getting on your phones or getting on the TV or whatever, that's very relaxing stuff, right? Maybe you do something else. Maybe you have dinner with good friends. You invite some community members over and you hang out. Maybe you invite your neighbor that you've never known or you want to get to know better. We have a lot of new neighbors coming into Pullman. It's a great opportunity to incorporate somebody like that into your Sabbath. Again, the second one is put your distractions away. For me, it's my phone. Amy knows this. She's in the room. She knows. She's like, I don't always do this very well on Sabbath day, just to be vulnerable with you. But it's something that is really good. My son helps me with this because he plays on my phone all the time. And so on Fridays, I'm like, here you go. I won't see it for hours. Put your phones and distractions away. Have dinner with your friends with no devices and discuss more what God has been doing in your life. Go on a walk. This is, again, one of my favorite things to do. Maybe you go on a walk. Me and my little Lillian go on walks from time to time. And she's so much fun to talk to through these things. Maybe read a book you've been putting off for a while. What's a good book that you're like, yes, I want to read this? I'm going to out Corbin and I a little bit because sometimes sometimes theology books just feels like work for me, right? It's like, well, yeah, okay. I've read a lot of those in my life. Once in a while, him and I will just throw a Star Wars book in or two. It's like, hey, why not? It's fun. There is a bit of renewing things to read something different. Maybe you worship the Lord by yourself. You go for a drive. There's a lot of great places to drive around. You just turn the music on. You worship. You just sing yourself in the car. No one to hear you. You just worship. Something that you truly enjoy. So this is going to be work for some people, so not everyone's going to do this, but I like to clean. I put in like a good audio book, and I just go cleaning. Like Amy is, everyone's oblivious, and I'm just cleaning. I love it. I get filled up that way. I'm done. I feel like, I'm like, yeah, clean house. I can lay down. It feels good. I enjoy doing that. One thing, again, vulnerability time, all right? One thing that I've been doing a lot lately, I have a pastor cousin who lives in Colorado, and him and I kind of have the same passions. We like to do things. And so what happened is we bought a video game and we play it together on Friday nights. And it's like mutually renewing for both of us because I haven't seen him for years, but we have this connection. And another pastor comes in, and so it's like, you have all these pastors like shooting other people in video games, right? But I love it. It's so much fun, and I get so renewed by it. We should have a cool name or something, like the Sons of Asaph or something that are going. You have to customize it in a way that really that you get it. that you know it, that you understand it, that you're like, yes, this is renewing. This is not just relaxing, but it's renewing. And it's a great time for us because we inadvertently just start talking about our weeks with these guys. Like here we are blowing stuff up and we're just talking about these hard board meetings we may have had, or maybe there was something going on and we're just kind of talking to one another. We don't realize that we're like ministering to one another while we're doing this. It's actually pretty cool. And the third part that I want you guys to do is I want you to talk about it. I want you to share. I want you to reflect on this. So a big part of this practice that we do is that we use have a QR code, I believe, that I put up here. So this is going to take you to a link. It should be, we're going to have it on the apps as well. So I want you to kind of reflect on your Sabbath. So once you start getting into it this week, whatever it is, I want you to write about it. I want you to process through this, as app's going to have a number of questions for you to go through and to think about. But I want you to share your stories. Share your stories with this on how this went, how poorly it went, or how great it went, or whatever that is. Just reflect on that. Because one thing I like to do in these is we like to read the stories, encourage people. Because a lot of times you just need to hear that somebody can do it in order to be encouraged to do it yourself. So as you think about it, as you go through this week, I want you to just reflect on it, write it out, tell us how it went. And if you want us to share it, you just indicate like, yeah, it's okay to share this, and we'll share it because we want people to know. So the importance of Selah. Take a stop this week, change the routine, and embrace the rest that Jesus has for you.